We also have the function of advertising a bunch of stuff to people, right? We do have a catalog that's rather complete. Right? And it allows us to actually amalgamate several different pieces of information here together. We could have requests that are IT oriented. We could have requests that are line of business oriented, human resources, finance, etc., all brought together into a single interface. Right? All searchable. I can do whatever. New hire provisioning in here. And it'll search and tell me I got a couple of different processes for this because of the nature of what the demo is. And if I select one, I'm basically submitting a service, so it's going to collect or ask me for information about this service. Fill this out and submit it, and I don't have to care about how it gets fulfilled on the back end. You notice it didn't say, hey, this is an incident, or this is a change, or this is a work order. Right? I provide information in this interface, and it creates something. So you'll notice I actually did this earlier. Go back to my updates, I have a new hire provisioning aspect here. And I submitted this already. Right? So what it did was, we're in here. I have all of my kind of information that I might submit with respect to this. It captures and remembers the details of all those questions that I was asked. And on the back end, it actually creates some objects for fulfillment. Any different, really, than service request management did. But you can see that we have a much nicer interface and a lot of other functionality that's going on here. Okay? And within something like Smart IT, we can see that what's represented back to, we'll take a look at that request. In IT is not just the request, but the basic pieces and parts that made up. So we see the same thing, the answers to the questions the guy provided me information on for that new hire provision request, and the fact that a bunch of process steps got created and we're tracking individually here. You'll also notice that Joe Unser added a note to this. He gave me some additional information about this request. That information will also appear on every associated change in work order. So if Joe goes into that My IT interface and makes a comment on what he submitted, that information is propagated to everyone involved. It doesn't just end up on the request. I remember to go look at it. It'll remember on the change and on these 3 work orders, the same piece of information will appear. So it becomes a methodology for Joe really to be communicating back to IT, not just on the request, but any additional information that's necessary, updates he has that's important to the people fulfilling his request. Right. We also have the ability to, note some information about a person by location. So I'll just share my location. You can see I'm actually sitting a little bit north of Atlanta right now. And we can programmatically put in locations here too. So I can say, hey, this is the main BMC Houston headquarters. I'm going to take a look at that. I'm actually going to have to fly out there, and I have to go to this executive briefing center we have. And I don't work in Houston, so I'm not really familiar with the layout of the place. So wouldn't it be great if I could have a map to the place I'm going to, showing me various resources that are important to me. I know I have a meeting in a particular conference room. I don't even know where that is in this facility. So I'm going to go down here and take a look. I'm meeting in, let's say, the Colorado room here. So there it is. Right? And while I'm in there, I can actually bring up that resource, and I can do a reservation against it. I can check into it so people know I'm there. Hey, I'm there. That's where you'll find me in Houston that week. Right? I can make that reservation. I can post some timeline information even here too. So maybe I had a tip that said, the remote control for the projector in this room is hidden behind the whiteboard. Well, that would be useful to know because I'm not from there. So all that stuff becomes available to me as an employee. I didn't have to go ask someone. I can go navigate myself, get around, do these things, and basically provide self-service to myself in that way. So great feature. How do we get there? Right. So I just showed you some real good reasons about why I might want to go to something like Remedy 9 and start taking advantage of smart reporting, Smart IT, My IT interface for the end users. Upgrading. I encourage you, if you're on the phone here, you're on a WebEx, screenshot the slide. Go to these 2 links. Right. Our developers will explain to you in a YouTube video. Right. Not just the best way to get there. They'll show you all the features that got built into 9 that make it even easier than it's ever been to perform this. Right? So what did we add? Well, kind of an upgrade wizard approach, right? So we've got a couple of different points where we're going to branch and ask you, what are you upgrading from? Something previous to 7604, 7604, 81 or later? Right? And then we'll branch out what steps you're going to take. And we've even made this upgrade process what we call non-events upgrades for the platform. So what's the platform? The platform is AR System, Smart Reporting, and Atrium Core. So we've made that a non-event in the sense that you should be able to perform that upgrade, meaning I am in, let's say, moving something from 9.0 to 9.1 kind of thing. I should be able to put those pieces of the platform seamlessly. It shouldn't become a non-event for you. I should be able to hit the upgrader and install it and not have it be a major headache. So how did we get to something like that? Well, there are things like configuration checkers we've now built into the product. If your configuration isn't appropriate for how we feel it should be before we start this process, we check. And then we report that information back out to you so that you can remediate that. One of the timeliest efforts that was in any of these upgrade processes was handling customizations. Now, we build overlays in there, and especially granular overlays in 8.1, right, that allowed us to take some of those customizations, those things we called additive overlays, and just immediately go ahead and apply them because they were what we considered additive. You added a new field, right? That's additive. You're going to accept what we provide, and you're going to add this bit of uniqueness of your own. We just accept those, and the installers understand additive overlays and just accept them. But if you've customized something for your own specific processes, right, you have to reconcile those customizations with the new code that came in. And that was a process where in the past, we basically said, you have to go reconcile these things. And we didn't give you a lot of help with that. So what you ended up having to do was take 3 separate instances of DevStudio, looking at kind of 3 different servers, open them up at the same time, have them all kind of tiled on your screen, and try to figure it out from there. We've gone way better than that. Right? 3-way reconciliation. We do the same function within a single instance of DevStudio. And we don't just bring up like 3 panes. Right? We bring up 3 panes that are looking at kind of an old system, the new out-of-the-box system, and your customization, all laid out side by side, with the differences color-coded. So you can see what was different between these 3 objects. I have the old version of the object, what I changed it to, and what the new one is, and then we can make a decision about what we're doing. Are we going to try to alter something or preserve my overlay? Or did BMC build something where I don't need my overlay anymore? They've made the change that's more or less the same as the change I made, so I'll go ahead and get rid of my overlay. Right? Speeds up this process. I think the data I got back is it cuts the time in half doing this kind of reconciliation. And then there's a few other things we added in here on Remedy 9 that really talk to the power of the platform itself and other steps we've made. We're constantly listening to customers. And there were 2 kind of key features that were takeaways on this of the many that came along with 9. Obviously, rewrite of code from the ground up in Remedy 9. You guys have seen that before or have heard it talked to. That is rewritten from a C to a Java code background that enabled us to shrink our code base tremendously. In addition to things like that, out-of-the-box archiving. I think people have been asking for this one for a long time. So we've had an archive process before, but it was a framework, right? I could establish archiving and workflow behind it, and I could copy data from a form to an archive form. And that's great. But a lot of the data that happens here, as you can see, if I have an incident, it's in an HPD help desk form, and part of the data about that is stored in a child form. So I have HPD work log entries. So if I create an archive for HPD help desk, it only archives HPD help desk. But what about all the things it's related to? Well, we've now taken care of that, actually. So the policy and the associations are set up for all of these main objects, things like an incident, a change, a work order, etc. That when I establish a policy for archiving on them, we move all of that data into a pre-existing set of archive tables that are already there. We already built it all. You just have to configure it and turn it on. And then we went one step further. We don't just archive it to a set of archive tables on the same database. We have the ability to export from that archive on a periodic basis, put the records out as a CSV, dump the attachments to files on a disk. You can then move that stuff, back it up, do whatever you want to for long-term storage of that information, and then delete it from the database. So instead of ending up with these monstrous databases I've run for 10 years and I've got millions and millions of tickets in there and it's really clogging stuff up, and maybe you only have 1,000 or 2,000 or live at any one point in time, we can archive that, right? So now we run a rolling archive. Maybe I only want 12 months of rolling live data on the system, and the rest gets moved to an archive table on the same database. Then I have another policy that says, hey, after 2 years, export it out and delete it. So it's not even, kind of at that point, truncating the size of my database and keeping it under control. Cool feature. I don't even want to know how many years I've been asked for that one, right? Trust me, I've been in the trenches. I've delivered the product. I have been a Remedy developer. I've instantiated this for many customers. And boy, I wish this had been there years ago. Then the next thing we've taken interest in is this idea of separation of duties that many of our customers have. And while it was possible to kind of manually do this before, we didn't do much in the way of integrity checks for it. You could put things you've created, be it data or workflow, into an object called a package, and then extract that package and move it between the systems. But what we wanted to do is make that experience better. So in a separation of duties kind of environment, someone who touches development isn't necessarily allowed to touch QA or production directly. So they have to work through someone else, maybe an administrator in charge of that function. That administrator may or may not be a skilled developer. So if they're not a skilled developer, we want to make it possible for the skilled developer in the development environment to pull his changes, right? Have a plugin that validates that all that stuff that I pulled, that all the dependencies are there, that I've got everything I needed, and be able to export that in one chunk that I can then pass to someone who simply runs a very simple process, imports the package, it's revalidated, and he deploys it, without having to have a lot of expertise in the product. And same thing moving to production. That makes it very simple, very easy, very quick for people to move things between dev, QA test, and a production environment without the developer himself having access to all three of those.